Ecosystem impact on population size and resources. A population is a group of the same species living together in one area. The size of a population changes depending on biotic and abiotic factors and all interactions affecting that population. Consider the population size of lions in African grasslands. What biotic and abiotic factors would determine how many lions could survive there? What types of interactions are important for the lion's survival? Biotic factors include the number of prey animals present, the number of hyenas, the number of other big cats, and the amount of grass for prey to eat. Abiotic factors include sunlight, water, and temperature. Interactions include predator-prey, competition, and parasitism. Populations and ecosystems increase when new organisms are born and when organisms move into the population. Populations decrease when organisms die or when organisms move out of the population. Illegal poaching of elephants for their ivory tusks severely decreased many elephant populations. Ecologists often use equations to help them model or understand natural changes. This equation shows the factors that affect the annual change in the number of organisms in a population. Delta N equals B plus I minus D minus E. Delta N is the annual change in number of organisms, B is the annual births, I is the annual immigration or the number of organisms moving in, D is the annual deaths, and E is the annual emigration, the number of organisms moving out. Some of the abiotic and biotic factors that impact rates of population growth include resources, the availability of food, water, shelter, and habitat, community interactions, predator-prey interactions, competition and symbiosis, and interactions with the land and weather. If the factors on the previous slide do not inhibit population growth, then every year there would be more births than deaths. A graph of population growth could look like this depending on the growth pattern. Population sizes change depending on how much success organisms have as they try to obtain the resources they need. Consider a population of deer in a forest. For most of the year, they eat plants, fruit, seeds, and nuts. During the winter, it is more difficult for them to find food. Resources are limited, and they will eat whatever they can find, including twigs, leaves, and bark. If they are unable to find food, their population size will decrease. Resources impact population size. When resources are readily available, population size will increase. When resources are not available, population size will decrease. Limiting factors are abiotic or biotic factors that limit a population to a particular size in an ecosystem. The population size that can be reached in the presence of limiting factors is the carrying capacity. Water may be a limiting factor for these populations. Examples of limiting factors. When there's not enough usable nitrogen in the soil, plants don't grow well because they can't make proteins or nucleic acids. Usable nitrogen is the limiting factor. When there's a parasite in a fish population in a pond, the fish population cannot increase because so much of the fish's energy goes into fighting the parasite. The parasite is the limiting factor. When big cats and rabbits share the same ecosystem, they can each be the limiting factor for the other, because predation is the limiting factor for the rabbits and food is the limiting factor for the big cats. When a population size is maintained near its carrying capacity, the graph of population size over time may look like the one below. The population size is fluctuating around a carrying capacity. When a population is at its carrying capacity, the change in population, delta N, equals 0. Using the population change equation, if delta N equals 0, then B plus I equals D plus E. The factors that increase the population, B and I, equal the factors that decrease the population, D and E. In one game park in East Africa, lions, leopards, and hyenas all compete for the gazelles and zebras. What types of community interactions are occurring among the 5 populations? What is the limiting factor for the carnivores? Answer on the next slide. There is competition between the lions, leopards, and hyenas for gazelles and zebras, a predator-prey interaction between the carnivores and the herbivores. The herbivores will compete for plants. All 5 species will compete for water. The limiting factor for the carnivores is food, the number of herbivores they can eat. In interspecific competition, the best competitor will gain access to additional resources and experience a population increase. The weaker competitor will not have access to necessary resources and will experience a population decrease. Lions and hyenas compete for killed game. If lions prevent hyenas from taking their kill, then lions will eat more food and have a stable or increasing population. Hyenas will eat less food and will have a decreasing population. Suppose that a forest of oak trees is discovered by a population of squirrels. The oak tree forest is tall and wide, offering abundant food and shelter. In light of these abundant resources, what do you predict will happen to the squirrel population? The squirrel population will increase. Over the next several years, the squirrel population continues to increase due to the availability of shelter and food. But as the squirrels' demand for food and shelter increases, the forest has remained the same size. The population will level off, reaching a carrying capacity because of the limiting factors of food and shelter. Squirrels will have to compete for nesting places and food. Not all will survive. For any population, in the presence of plentiful resources, the population will increase. However, as the population grows, the amount of resources necessary for survival also grows. If the population becomes bigger than the resources available, individuals will have to compete in order to survive. Intraspecific competition. Eventually, the population will level out at a certain size that is a balance between individuals and resources available. This population size is the carrying capacity. In stable environments, population size tends to fluctuate near the carrying capacity. When a species is introduced into an ecosystem for the first time, its population may grow exponentially until some factor in the environment begins to limit that growth. This diagram shows a population that grew exponentially when it was first introduced to the new ecosystem, and over time it reached its carrying capacity. The images below show a 1-year invasion of the kudzu vine. The kudzu vine is originally from Asia, where herbivores and weather keep it in check. In North America, there are few limiting factors. Human interaction or the introduction of more herbivores could possibly control this, but it's difficult. If a species takes hold in a new ecosystem and competes for limited resources, then other populations in the ecosystem will decrease in population size and may even go extinct in that area. Other plant life and the herbivores that feed on them might not be able to survive in this new ecosystem. Scientists are currently following the population growth and distribution of lionfish as they invade the Caribbean and Atlantic Oceans and are very concerned. Click for activity link.